They warned her that the beast in the Forbidden Tower would tear her apart if she even breathed near the door. They said he was rabid, cursed, a monster who had slaughtered his own guards in a fit of madness. But when Sera Ashford climbed those blood-stained stairs with trembling hands and a bowl of poisoned food, she found something else entirely. She found a king on his knees, wrapped in silver chains that burned through his flesh, his golden eyes pleading for a mercy that no one in the Red Moon Pack would ever give him. And in that moment, Sera made a choice that would shatter everything. She didn't poison him. She freed him. But freedom came with a price neither of them expected, and a secret that would make the entire shifter world bow or burn. You won't believe what she really is. Let's begin. Before we dive in, can I ask you for a quick favor? If you're enjoying these stories, it would mean the world if you'd hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I pour hours into researching, writing, and narrating these for you completely free. And your subscription is the only way I know you want more. It takes 2 seconds, and it helps this channel grow so I can keep bringing you the wildest shifter romances on YouTube. Okay, now let's get back to the story. The Red Moon Pack didn't execute traitors. They made examples of them. That's what Elder Mora told Sera when she handed her the wooden bowl filled with gray, lumpy porridge that smelled like rotten eggs and copper. Wolfsbane and nightshade, mixed with just enough gruel to make it look like food. "Take it to the tower," Mora said, her wrinkled face twisting into something that might have been a smile on someone less cruel. "Feed the animal. If he doesn't take it from your hand, leave it on the floor and run. Do you understand me, girl?" Sera understood. She understood that she was 23 years old and had been the Red Moon Pack's scapegoat since her mother died giving birth to her. She understood that every filthy, dangerous, soul-crushing job in this pack eventually landed on her shoulders. And she understood that if she refused, Elder Mora would have her whipped in the town square for insubordination. "Yes, Elder," Sera whispered, taking the bowl. The wood was rough and splintered, biting into her palms. "Good girl," Mora sneered. "And Sera?" "Don't look him in the eyes. Animals can smell fear, and that one's been starving for 3 days. If he decides you're more appetizing than the porridge, well," she shrugged. "You always said you wanted to be useful." Sera didn't respond. She turned and walked toward the eastern edge of the pack grounds, where the old stone tower loomed like a rotten tooth against the gray sky. The Red Moon territory was built on the ruins of an ancient battlefield. The ground was hard-packed dirt, mixed with ash, and nothing green ever grew here. The pack's main lodge was a sprawling structure of dark wood and iron. But the tower was something older, something left over from a time when wolves had kings instead of alphas. The guards at the base of the tower didn't even look at her as she approached. They were too busy passing a flask of something that smelled like gasoline and playing cards on an overturned crate. "Going up?" one of them asked, not glancing up from his hand. "Elder Mora's orders," Sera said quietly. "She send you with the Nightshade special?" Yes, the guard finally looked up. He was young, maybe 25, with a scar across his throat that told her he'd barely survived his first challenge. His eyes were cold. "Good. That bastard's been howling all night. Kept half the pack awake. About time someone shut him up." Sera wanted to ask who the prisoner was, but questions led to suspicion, and suspicion led to punishment. So she just nodded and moved toward the tower door. The heavy iron door shrieked on its hinges as she pulled it open. The smell hit her first blood, old and new, mixed with the acrid stench of burnt fur and something else, something medicinal and wrong. The staircase spiraled upward into darkness. Sera swallowed hard, clutching the bowl tighter, and began to climb. Each step echoed. The stone walls were damp, slick with something she didn't want to identify. Torches flickered in iron sconces every 10 steps, casting shadows that danced like demons. She counted 53 steps before she reached the top. The landing opened into a circular room with a single barred door. No windows, no furniture, just that door, reinforced with bands of silver that glowed faintly in the torchlight. And from behind it, she heard breathing. Not panting, not snarling, just slow, labored breathing. Like someone who had been holding on to life by sheer stubbornness and spite. Sera's hand shook as she reached for the iron latch. It wasn't locked. Why would it be? No wolf could touch silver without burning, and any human foolish enough to open this door wouldn't live long enough to regret it. She lifted the latch. The door swung open. The room beyond was smaller than she expected, maybe 15 feet across, with walls made of the same gray stone as the tower. Chains hung from the ceiling, thick and glowing with that eerie silver light. And at the center of it all, on his knees, was the wolf. No, not just a wolf. He was massive, even restrained. His fur was the color of midnight, so black it seemed to absorb the torchlight. His head hung low, his muzzle nearly touching the stone floor. But even from the doorway, Sera could see the silver chains wrapped around his neck, his torso, his legs. Everywhere the metal touched, the fur was gone, replaced by angry red burns that wept clear fluid. The wolf didn't move as she entered, didn't even lift his head. "I brought food," Sera whispered, her voice barely audible. Nothing. She took a step closer. The smell of burnt flesh was stronger here, mixing with the coppery tang of blood. She could see now that the chains weren't just restraints, they were torture devices. Barbs lined the inside of each link, digging into his skin with every breath. "I'm going to set it down," she continued, taking another step. "I'm not going to hurt you." The wolf's ear twitched, just slightly. Sera knelt about 5 feet from him, setting the bowl on the stone floor. This close, she could see the rise and fall of his ribs. He was starving. The gray porridge sloshed slightly as she slid it toward him. That's when he lifted his head. Sera's breath caught in her throat. His eyes. They weren't the yellow of a common wolf. They weren't even the amber of an alpha. They were gold. Pure, molten gold, flecked with bronze and burning with an intelligence that made her feel like he could see straight through her skin into her soul. And they were filled with pain. Not just physical pain, though. She could see that in every trembling muscle, but something deeper. Betrayal, rage, and underneath it all, something that looked almost like resignation. He looked at her. Then he looked at the bowl. His nostrils flared, and she saw his lips pull back slightly from his teeth. He knew. He knew it was poison. Sera's heart hammered against her ribs. She should leave. She should run. She should get out of this room before. The wolf looked back at her. And the strangest thing happened. His eyes softened. He lowered his head again, this time turning it to the side, exposing his throat. It was a gesture of submission. A gesture that said, "I'm not a threat. I'm already beaten." But that's not what Sera saw. What she saw was someone who had given up. Someone who had been tortured for days, maybe weeks, and was ready to accept death, even if it came in a bowl of poisoned porridge. She looked at the bowl. She looked at the wolf. And she made a decision that would change everything. "No," she whispered. The wolf's ear twitched again. Sera grabbed the bowl and stood up. "No, I'm not doing this." She turned and threw the bowl against the wall. It shattered, gray porridge splattering across the stone like vomit. The wolf's head came up fully now, his golden eyes wide with something that might have been shock. "I don't know who you are," Sera said, her voice shaking but firm. "I don't know what you did, but I'm not going to poison you. I'm not going to be the person who murders a helpless prisoner." The wolf stared at her. And then, impossibly, he shifted. The sound of cracking bones filled the room. Sera stumbled back, her shoulder hitting the wall as the massive wolf's body began to contort. The fur retracted, the snout shortened, the paws reformed into hands. But the chains didn't break. They couldn't. Silver was poison to shifters in any form. When the transformation finished, a man knelt where the wolf had been. He was breathtaking. Easily 6.5 feet tall, even on his knees, with broad shoulders and a torso carved from muscle and scars. His hair was the same midnight black as his fur, hanging in sweat-soaked strands past his jaw. His skin was pale, too pale, from blood loss and silver poisoning, but his eyes remained the same, molten gold. He was naked, the chains wrapped around him in the same places they had restrained the wolf, the barbs now digging into human flesh. Blood ran in thin streams down his chest, his arms, his thighs, and he was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Why?" he rasped. His voice was rough, like he'd been screaming. Or howling. Sera pressed herself against the wall. I don't murder people." "I'm not people," he coughed, a wet rattling sound. "I'm a monster. They told you that, didn't they? The rabid king who slaughtered his own pack?" "Are you?" Sera asked before she could stop herself. "A monster?" The man laughed. It was a broken, hollow sound. "Does it matter? You've already thrown away the poison. When they find out, they'll kill you. Then I'll run." "Where?" He shifted slightly, and the chains clinked. He winced. "There's nowhere in this territory, nowhere in the northern lands that the Red Moon Pack can't reach. Elder Mora probably has trackers on you already." Sera's blood ran cold. He was right. The Red Moon Pack was paranoid. They'd have her sent. They'd find her within hours. "Then what do I do?" she whispered. The man studied her, his gold eyes searching her face. "You free me." "What?" "The keys." He nodded toward the far wall. Sera followed his gaze and saw them 3 iron keys hanging on a hook, just out of his reach. They're arrogant. They think no wolf can reach them, and no human would dare. "You want me to unchain you?" Sera's voice pitched higher. "So you can what, tear me apart the second you're free?" "If I wanted you dead, little rabbit, I would have killed you the moment you walked through that door." His voice dropped lower, almost gentle. "I've been in these chains for 16 days. 16 days of silver burning through my muscles, of nightshade in every meal, of listening to guards place bets on how long until my wolf goes feral and eats itself. And in 16 days, you're the first person who looked at me like I was still a person." Sera's hands trembled. "Who are you?" The man met her eyes. "My name is Kalen Stormborn. I am." He paused, correcting himself. "I was the Alpha King of the Ironclaw Dominion. The Alpha King." Sera had heard stories. Everyone had. The Ironclaw Dominion was the largest territory on the continent, spanning from the frozen wastes to the ember forests. And the Alpha King was the sovereign over all packs within it. But the Alpha King was supposed to be dead. "They said you were killed," Sera breathed. "6 months ago. A coup. Your beta." "Ronan." Kalen spat the name like a curse. "My beta. My second. My brother in all but blood." His jaw clenched. "He poisoned me with silver dust during the full moon hunt. When my wolf was weakest, he and his conspirators dragged me to the border and sold me to the Red Moon Pack. Told them I was a rogue alpha, too dangerous to kill but profitable to keep alive." "Profitable?" "Hostage," Kalen said bitterly. "If the Ironclaw packs ever suspect I'm alive, the Red Moon Pack can ransom me, or execute me publicly and claim they were cleaning up a rogue." He coughed again, harder this time. Blood flecked his lips. "But I don't think I'll last long enough for either." Sera looked at the keys, then at the man who claimed to be a king, then back at the keys. "If I do this," she said slowly, "what happens to me?" Kalen's expression softened. "I protect you. I take you with me when I leave, and I make sure no one from this pack ever touches you again. You'd take me with you? Sera's voice was small. Why? Because you chose mercy when you could have chosen cruelty. Kaylin's golden eyes burned with intensity. Because the world has too few people like you and too many like them. He paused. And because, my wolf, he trailed off, his gaze dropping to the floor. Never mind. Will you help me or not? Sera looked at him. Really looked at him. At the burns, the blood, the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. She thought about Elder Mora, about the guards, about 23 years of being the pack's punching bag. She thought about what her mother would have done. Then she walked across the room and grabbed the keys. If you kill me, Sera said, her voice steadier than she felt, I'm going to haunt you for eternity. For the first time since she'd entered the room, Kaylin smiled. Noted, the first key unlocked the collar around his neck. Sera's hands shook as she inserted the iron into the mechanism. The lock was old, stubborn, and she had to use both hands to turn it. Kaylin stayed perfectly still, barely breathing, as the key clicked and the heavy silver collar fell away. The relief on his face was immediate. He gasped, sucking in air like a drowning man, his head tilting back. Thank you, he breathed. Sera moved to the chains around his wrists. These were tighter, the barbs dug deeper. As she worked the second key into the lock, she saw how bad the damage really was. The silver had burned through skin and muscle, exposing bone in some places. How are you even conscious? She whispered. Spite, Kaylin said, and the hope that eventually someone like you would walk through that door. The wrist chains fell away. Kaylin pulled his arms forward, rolling his shoulders with a series of sickening pops. He looked down at his shredded wrists, his expression unreadable. Last one, Sera said, moving to the chains around his ankles. As she knelt, she was suddenly very aware of how vulnerable she was. If he wanted to hurt her, now would be the moment. She was at his feet, focused on the lock, her throat completely exposed. The third key turned. The ankle chains clattered to the stone floor. Kaylin was free. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Sera stayed kneeling, her heart hammering, waiting for claws or teeth or a hand touched her shoulder. Gently. Stand up, Kaylin said softly. Please. Sera stood and found herself looking up, way up into those golden eyes. You freed me, Kaylin said, his voice rough with emotion. Do you understand what that means? That you're going to leave and I'm going to die when Elder Mora finds out? No. He cupped her face with one ruined hand, his thumb brushing her cheek. The touch was warm despite the blood. It means I owe you a life debt, and I always pay my debts. Before Sera could respond, a sound echoed up the stairwell. Footsteps, heavy ones, multiple sets. Kaylin's expression darkened. They're coming. How did they... The chains, he said, looking at the silver restraints on the floor. They're enchanted. When they're removed, they send an alert to whoever commissioned them. Elder Mora. Most likely. Kaylin straightened to his full height, and despite his injuries, despite his nakedness, despite everything, he suddenly looked every inch a king. How many guards are at the base of the tower? 2 when I came in. And how many do you think are coming now? Sera listened. The footsteps were getting louder. At least 6, maybe more. Kaylin nodded slowly. Can you fight? I'm not a shifter. That's not what I asked. Sera thought about the knife she kept hidden in her boot. The one she'd stolen from the kitchens 3 years ago when a drunk enforcer had cornered her in the pantry. She'd never had to use it, but she knew how. I can try, she said. Good! Kaylin walked to the wall where the chains had been anchored. He grabbed one of the silver chains, his hand immediately sizzling where it touched the metal, and ripped it free from the wall mount. I'm going to need you to stay behind me, no matter what happens. You can't even hold that without burning. I know. He wrapped the chain around his forearm, his jaw clenching against the pain. But they don't know I can still shift. They think 16 days of silver poisoning would have crippled my wolf permanently. They're wrong. The footsteps reached the landing. Kalen moved to the door, positioning himself to the side. He looked back at Sera and mouthed, "Trust me." The door burst open. 4 guards poured in, dressed in Red Moon Enforcer gear, leather armor reinforced with iron studs, silver-tipped spears, and arrogance. "Where's the girl?" the lead guard barked. "Sera Ashford, you're under." He stopped mid-sentence, staring at the empty chains on the floor. Then his gaze snapped to Kalen, standing in the shadows. "Holy shit," the guard breathed. "He's loose." Kalen smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Hello, boys. Miss me?" The guards reacted on instinct. 2 shifted immediately, their bones cracking as they dropped to all fours. The other 2 raised their spears. Kalen moved first. Despite his injuries, despite the silver poisoning, he moved like liquid death. He swung the chain in his hand like a whip, the silver links catching the first guard across the face. The man screamed, stumbling back, his cheek seared where the metal had touched. One of the shifted wolves lunged. Kalen sidestepped, grabbing the wolf by the scruff and using its own momentum to slam it into the stone wall. The wolf yelped, dazed. The second wolf was smarter. It circled around, trying to get behind Kalen, trying to reach Sera. Kalen's eyes flashed gold. No. The temperature in the room dropped. Sera felt it, a pressure in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. The remaining guards felt it too. They froze, their eyes widening. "Do you know who I am?" Kalen's voice was no longer human. It was something deeper, older, vibrating with power that made Sera's bones ache. "I am Kalen Stormborn, Alpha King of the Ironclaw Dominion, first of his line, sovereign of 7 territories, and you have made a grave mistake." He shifted, but not completely. His body remained mostly human, but his hands extended into claws, his teeth sharpened into fangs, and his eyes blazed with golden fire. It was a partial shift, something only the most powerful alphas could do. The circling wolf whimpered and backed away. Kalen grabbed the spear from the guard he'd hit with the chain. In one fluid motion, he spun and threw it like a javelin. It caught the second shifted wolf through the shoulder, pinning it to the wooden door with a meaty thunk. The wolf howled in pain but couldn't move. 2 down, 2 to go. The remaining guards weren't stupid. They ran. Kalen let them go. He stood in the center of the room, breathing hard, blood dripping from his hands where the silver chain had burned him. Then his legs gave out. "Kalen!" Sera rushed forward, catching him before he hit the ground. He was heavy, so heavy, but she managed to lower him to his knees. "I'm fine," he rasped. "You're bleeding everywhere." "I'm fine," he repeated, more firmly. He looked at her, his eyes returning to their human gold. "We need to leave, now. Those guards are going to bring reinforcements, and I can't fight off an entire pack in this condition. Where do we go?" "Anywhere that's not here." Kalen stood, using Sera's shoulder to steady himself. "Do you have family in the pack? Anyone who'll be hurt if you disappear?" Sera shook her head. "No one." "Good." He looked around the room, his gaze landing on the pinned wolf still whimpering near the door. He walked over, placed his foot on the wolf's chest, and yanked the spear free. The wolf yelped but stayed down. "Shift," Kalen commanded. The wolf obeyed. Within seconds, a naked man lay on the floor, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Kalen crouched beside him. "Tell Elder Mora that the prisoner sends his regards. Tell her that if she sends anyone after us, I will return. And when I do, I will burn the Red Moon Pack to ash and salt the earth, so nothing ever grows here again. Do you understand?" The man nodded frantically. "Good." Kalen stood and looked at Sera. Let's go. They ran. Down the spiral staircase, Sera in front, Kaylin behind her. His hand stayed on her shoulder, guiding her, steadying her when she stumbled. When they burst out of the tower entrance, the two guards from before were waiting. But the moment they saw Kaylin bleeding, furious, and very much unchained, they scrambled backward. "Stop them!" someone shouted from across the grounds. Sera looked and saw more guards pouring out of the main lodge. At least 20. Maybe more. "This way," Kaylin said, pulling her toward the eastern fence. It was old wood, rotting in places, and beyond it lay the thornwood forest. "We'll never make it," Sera gasped. "We will." Kaylin picked up speed, and despite everything, he was fast. "When I tell you to jump, you jump. Understand?" "What?" "Jump." Kaylin grabbed her around the waist and launched himself at the fence. They hit the top together, crashed through the rotten wood, and tumbled into the undergrowth on the other side. Sera landed hard. The wind knocked out of her lungs. Kaylin landed in a crouch, immediately pulling her to her feet. "Run," he said. She ran. Behind them, she could hear howls. The pack was shifting, preparing to hunt. The thornwood forest was ancient and dense, the trees so close together that barely any light penetrated the canopy. Roots jutted up from the ground like grasping fingers, and the air smelled of rot and moss. Sera's lungs burned. Her legs screamed, but Kaylin's hands stayed locked around hers, pulling her forward, navigating the darkness like he could see in the dark. Maybe he could. "There," he said suddenly, pointing to a rocky outcropping ahead. "A cave. We can hide there." They scrambled up the rocks and into the shallow cave mouth. It was barely big enough for both of them, but it was shelter. Kaylin collapsed against the stone wall, his breathing ragged. In the dim light filtering through the trees, Sera could see just how bad his condition really was. The burns from the silver had stopped bleeding, but they weren't healing. His skin was gray, his lips tinged blue, silver poisoning. It would kill him within days if he didn't get help. "Kaylin," Sera whispered, "you need a healer." "No healers," he said. "Can't trust anyone, not until we're out of Red Moon territory." "Then what do we do?" He looked at her, and for the first time since they'd met, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not fear of death, fear of something else. "I need to tell you something," he said slowly. "Something that changes everything." "What?" Kaylin reached out and took her hand. His palm was warm, feverish. "When I first saw you in that tower, when you walked through the door, my wolf reacted. It recognized something." "Recognized what?" He met her eyes. "You're my mate, Sera." The world tilted. "That's impossible," Sera breathed. "I'm human. Humans can't be mates to shifters. It's genetically impossible. Everyone knows." "Everyone's wrong." Kaylin's grip tightened. "It's rare. So rare that most modern shifters think it's a myth. But in the old bloodlines, in the royal lines, sometimes the fates pair us with humans, because human mates bring something we lack: compassion, mercy, humanity." Sera stared at him. "You're saying I'm fated to be with you? That we're bonded?" "Not yet. The bond won't fully form until you accept it, until you choose me." He released her hand. "And you don't have to. You owe me nothing. You freed me, yes, but you don't owe me your life. If you want to leave, I'll make sure you get somewhere safe, and you'll never see me again." "And if I stay?" Kaylin's expression was raw, vulnerable. "If you stay, you become part of my world. You'll have a target on your back. Every enemy I've ever made will come after you to get to me. You'll never be safe again." Sera should have been terrified. She should have run. But as she looked at this broken king, this man who had been tortured for 16 days and still fought to protect her, she felt something click into place in her chest, like a key turning in a lock she didn't know existed. "I'm already not safe," she said quietly. The Red Moon Pack will hunt me for the rest of my life, for freeing you. At least with you, I have a chance. Is that the only reason? Sera looked at him, really looked at him, at the gold in his eyes, at the way he'd put himself between her and danger without hesitation, at the way he'd asked instead of commanded. No, she admitted. It's not. Kaelin exhaled, a sound of relief and something deeper. Then we have a problem. What? The mate bond, he said. It's already forming. I can feel it. But it's incomplete. And until it's complete, I can't fully heal. The silver poisoning will keep getting worse. Then how do we complete it? Kaelin's eyes darkened with heat. I bite you, mark you, claim you as mine in a way that can never be broken. It's intimate. Sera's cheeks flushed. Oh, we don't have to do it now, he added quickly. We can wait. We can. Howls echoed through the forest. Close. Too close. Kaelin's expression hardened. They're tracking us. We have maybe 10 minutes before they find this cave. Then do it, Sera said. What? Mark me. Complete the bond. If it'll heal you, if it'll give us a chance to survive, then do it. She moved closer to him, her heart pounding. I trust you, Kaelin. Sera, this is permanent. There's no going back. Once I mark you, I know. She cupped his face, feeling the fever heat of his skin. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. Something broke in Kaelin's expression. The careful control, the distance. It all shattered, leaving something raw and desperate behind. Come here, he rasped. Sera moved into his arms, and he pulled her close, cradling her against his chest. She could feel his heart hammering, could smell the copper and rain scent of him mixed with blood and silver. This will hurt, he warned, his lips against her ear. I'll try to be gentle, but the marking, it has to be deep. It has to scar. I understand. Kaelin's hand slid into her hair, tilting her head to expose the curve of her neck. His breath was hot against her skin. Sera Ashford, he murmured, his voice dropping into that inhuman register again. I, Kaelin Stormborn, Alpha King of the Ironclaw Dominion, claim you as my mate, my equal, my queen. Do you accept? Every instinct in Sera's body screamed, yes, I accept. Then hold on to me. His teeth sank into the junction of her neck and shoulder. The pain was white-hot, searing through her like lightning. Sera gasped, her fingers digging into Kaelin's shoulders. But underneath the pain was something else, a rush of sensation that felt like falling and flying at the same time. She could feel him. Not just his body against hers, but his emotions, his relief, his gratitude, his fierce, overwhelming protectiveness. And underneath it all, a love so pure and absolute it made her want to cry. The mate bond snapped into place, like a steel cable pulled taut. Kaelin released her neck, licking the wound to seal it. When he pulled back, his eyes were glowing pure gold. Mine, he breathed. Yours, Sera whispered. And then something impossible happened. The burns on Kaelin's body began to heal. Not slowly, not gradually, but rapidly. The silver-poisoned flesh knitting together. The gray pallor fading from his skin, replaced by healthy color. Sera watched in awe as the mate bond did what 16 days of torture couldn't break. It healed him. Within minutes, Kaelin was whole again. The wounds were gone. His strength returned. He looked like what he truly was, a king in his prime. He stood, pulling Sera up with him, and looked out at the forest. They're coming, he said. But now, they're going to regret it. Sera touched the mark on her neck. It throbbed with warmth. What do we do? Kaelin smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who just remembered he was apex. We show them what happens when you cage a king. He turned to her, his expression softening. Stay close to me. No matter what happens next, Stay close. I will. Good. He kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it contrasted sharply with the violence in his eyes. Because the real story is about to begin. The Red Moon Pack's hunters burst into the clearing, expecting to find a dying king and a terrified human girl. What they found instead was a nightmare. Kaelin stood at the mouth of the cave, no longer injured, no longer weak. He was magnificent, 6.5 feet of controlled fury, his skin unmarked, his eyes blazing gold. The mate bond with Sera had done more than heal his wounds. It had restored his power, amplified it even. And now that power radiated from him like heat from a furnace. The lead hunter, a massive gray wolf, skidded to a halt. Behind him, 5 more wolves spread out in a semicircle, their eyes glowing in the darkness. The gray wolf shifted, revealing a man Sera recognized. Garrett, one of Elder Mora's enforcers. You should be dead, Garrett snarled, his nose twitching as he caught a new scent. His eyes widened. You marked her? You marked the human? She has a name, Kaelin said, his voice deadly calm. Use it. She's dead anyway. We'll rip that mark right off her throat. And Kaelin moved. One moment he was standing still. The next, he had Garrett by the throat, lifted clear off the ground. Finish that sentence, Kaelin invited, his voice dropping into a growl. Please, give me a reason. The other wolves attacked as one. But Kaelin was ready. He threw Garrett into 2 of the charging wolves, sending all 3 tumbling. He caught the 4th wolf mid-leap, his hands gripping its jaws and forcing them apart with a sickening crack. The wolf whimpered and retreated. The remaining 2 wolves tried to flank him, but Kaelin shifted partially his favorite form, the one that gave him human intelligence and dexterity with wolf strength and claws. He caught one wolf across the ribs with claws that cut through fur and flesh like butter. The wolf yelped and limped away. The final wolf, seeing its pack decimated in seconds, turned tail and ran. Kaelin let it go. He shifted back to fully human, breathing calmly, not even winded. Garrett pushed himself up from the ground, blood streaming from his nose. The Alpha will hear about this. Elder Mora will. Elder Mora, Kaelin interrupted, is going to receive a message, and you're going to deliver it. He walked over to Garrett and crouched down, his golden eyes boring into the enforcer's skull. Tell her that the Iron Claw King lives. Tell her that she harbored me without knowing who I was, and that if she had known, she would have returned me to my people and sued for peace. Tell her that she has 3 days to send a formal apology to the Iron Claw Dominion, or I will consider the Red Moon Pack an enemy territory. We don't bow to, end quote. Kaelin's hand shot out, grabbing Garrett's jaw. Let me be very clear. The only reason I'm not slaughtering every wolf in your pack right now is because my mate asked me not to. She believes in mercy. I do not. If you test me, if you send one more hunter after us, I will show you what happens when an Alpha King decides diplomacy is over. He released Garrett and stood. Now run, before I change my mind. Garrett ran. The remaining wolves followed, disappearing into the darkness of the thornwood. Kaelin turned back to Sera, and the violence in his expression melted away, replaced by concern. Are you hurt? No, Sera breathed. That was necessary, he finished. Word will spread now. Every pack in the region will know I'm alive. Some will celebrate, others, he trailed off, his jaw tightening. Others will see it as an opportunity. Ronan, Sera said, you're Beta. He'll know you're coming for him. He'll know. Kaelin walked back to her, taking her hands. Which is why we need to move. We need to reach the Iron Claw capital before he consolidates his power. If he's been ruling for 6 months, he'll have loyalists. Wolves who believe his version of events. What's his version? That I went feral during a hunt and had to be put down. Kaelin's expression darkened. He'll have told the council that it was mercy. That he took on the burden of killing his king to save the pack from a mad alpha. Will they believe you when you return? Some will. The older families, the ones who remember the old laws, they'll recognize the truth. But the younger wolves, the ones Ronan's been cultivating. He shook his head. It's going to be a war, Sera. A civil war within the Dominion. Sera squeezed his hands. Then we'll fight it together. Kaelin looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. You realize what you've done, don't you? By accepting the mate bond, by letting me mark you, you've tied yourself to a king who has nothing. No throne, no pack, just enemies and a target on his back. You have me, Sera said simply. That's not nothing. For a moment, Kaelin just stared at her. Then he pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. How did I get so lucky? He murmured. You were tortured in a tower for 16 days. Worth it. Despite everything, Sera laughed. The sound felt strange in her throat, like she'd forgotten how. Kaelin pulled back, his expression serious again. We need supplies. Food, water, clothes. He glanced down at himself, still naked, especially clothes. Sera blushed, averting her eyes. There's a human town about 10 miles east. Riverton. They don't love the Red Moon Pack, but they tolerate them. We might be able to get supplies there. Can you make it 10 miles? Can you? Kaelin grinned. I'm not the one who's been working as a servant for 23 years. I'm tougher than I look. I'm beginning to realize that. He took her hand. Come on. We move now, rest later. They walked through the forest, Kaelin's hand never leaving hers. The mate bond thrummed between them, a constant warmth in Sera's chest that made her feel less alone than she'd felt in years. Can I ask you something? Sera said after a while. Anything. When we first met, you said your wolf recognized me. What did that mean? Kaelin was quiet for a moment. The wolf is instinct. Pure, unfiltered instinct. It doesn't understand politics or strategy or consequences. It just knows what it wants. And the moment you walked through that door, my wolf knew it wanted you. Because of the mate bond? Yes and no. He helped her over a fallen log. The fates choose mates, but the wolf recognizes the choice on a level deeper than conscious thought. It's like finding a piece of yourself you didn't know was missing. That's beautiful. It's also terrifying. Kaelin's grip tightened slightly, because once a wolf bonds, it can't unbond. If something happened to you, if I lost you, my wolf would go feral. Truly feral. I'd become the monster the Red Moon Pack thought I was. Sera stopped walking. Then we don't let anything happen to me. I intend to make sure of it. They continued in comfortable silence until the trees began to thin. Ahead, Sera could see the flicker of firelight. Riverton. We need a story, Kaelin said. Humans will ask questions. Why you're with a naked stranger. Why you have a fresh mark on your neck. We're married, Sera said. We were traveling when bandits attacked us. They stole everything, including your clothes. We managed to escape, but now we need help. Kaelin raised an eyebrow. That was quick. I've spent 23 years coming up with excuses for bruises and injuries. I'm good at lying. Remind me never to play cards with you. They emerged from the forest onto the dirt road leading into Riverton. It was a small town, maybe 200 people, built around a central square. Most of the buildings were dark, but the tavern, the Broken Wheel, had lights in the windows and the sound of laughter spilling out. Wait here, Sera said. Let me see if I can get you something to wear before we walk through town. Sera, you're naked. People will remember a naked man, but a clothed stranger, one among many. She touched his chest. Trust me. Kaelin caught her hand and pressed it over his heart. Through the mate bond, she could feel his reluctance to let her out of his sight, but also his understanding that she was right. 5 minutes, he said. If you're not back in 5 minutes, I'm coming in. Deal. Sera approached the tavern carefully. slipping around to the back where clothes hung on a line, drying in the night air. She grabbed what looked like a pair of workman's trousers and a rough sponge shirt. Not fancy, but functional. As she turned to leave, a voice stopped her cold. "Well, well, what do we have here?" Sera spun to find a woman standing in the tavern's back door. She was maybe 40, with graying hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "I'm sorry," Sera stammered. "I didn't mean to." "Steal my laundry?" The woman crossed her arms. "Because that's what it looks like you're doing. My husband and I were robbed. He has nothing to wear. I was going to come back and pay for these. I swear." The woman studied her. Then her gaze landed on Sera's neck, on the fresh mark partially hidden by her collar. "That's a claiming bite," the woman said flatly. Sera's blood ran cold. "You're a brave one," the woman continued, "or stupid, walking around marked by a wolf in the middle of Red Moon territory." She stepped closer. "What pack is he from?" Sera's mind raced. She could lie, but something about this woman told her lies wouldn't work. "He's not from the Red Moon pack," Sera said carefully. "Obviously, Red Moon doesn't mark humans." The woman's eyes narrowed. "So who is he?" Before Sera could answer, Kaylin appeared at her side. He must have felt her distress through the bond. He was still naked, but carried himself with such authority that the woman actually took a step back. "I'm her mate," Kaylin said simply, "and we need help." The woman looked between them. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed. "You've got guts. I'll give you that." She grabbed the clothes from Sera's hands and shoved them at Kaylin. "Put these on before you scandalize the whole town. Then come inside. We need to talk." "Why would you help us?" Sera asked suspiciously. The woman smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "Because I know who you are, Your Majesty." She looked directly at Kaylin. "And I've been waiting 6 months for you to come back from the dead." The back room of the Broken Wheel smelled like ale, wood smoke, and secrets. The woman who'd introduced herself as Miriam poured 3 cups of something amber and slid them across the worn table. "Drink," she ordered. "You both look like you've seen hell." Kaylin, now dressed in the borrowed clothes that were slightly too small but better than nothing, took the cup but didn't drink. "How did you recognize me?" "I didn't," Miriam said. "Not at first. But the way you moved, the way you looked at the girl like she was the only thing keeping you human, and that marking bite on her neck, fresh, clean, dominant. That's not some rogue wolf playing house. That's royalty." She sat down across from them. "Plus, I've seen your face before. 20 years ago, you came through here with your father. You were just a pup then, maybe 7 or 8. He was negotiating peace treaties with the northern packs. I ran this tavern back then too." Kaylin's expression softened slightly. "I remember. You gave me honey cakes. You ate 6 of them and threw up in my bushes." Miriam smirked. "Your father apologized profusely and paid me triple. I liked him. He was a good king." "He was." Kaylin agreed quietly. "So," Miriam leaned back, "the rumor was you died 6 months ago. Hunting accident. Your beta took over, said you'd gone feral and he had to put you down. Except here you are, very much alive, marked to a human, and hiding in my tavern. Want to tell me what really happened?" Kaylin and Sera exchanged glances. Through the mate bond, Sera felt his caution warring with his instinct to trust. "Ronan didn't put me down," Kaylin said finally. "He sold me to the Red Moon pack. They kept me chained in silver for 16 days. Miriam's expression darkened. "And the girl?" "I freed him," Sera said. "They ordered me to poison him. I didn't." "Stupid girl," Miriam muttered, but there was respect in her voice. "Brave, but stupid. You know what the Red Moon pack will do when they find you?" "They already found us," Kaylin said. "We sent them back with a message." "What kind of message?" "The kind that's delivered in blood." Miriam whistled low. So you're declaring war. I'm reclaiming what's mine, Kaelin corrected. But yes, if Ronan doesn't step down, there will be war. He won't step down, Miriam said. Men like him don't. He's had 6 months to consolidate power, to plant loyalists in every major pack. Half the Dominion probably believes his story by now. Then I'll show them the truth. How? By walking into the capital and announcing you're alive? They'll cut you down before you reach the throne room. Miriam shook her head. You need allies. Real ones. Packs that still remember the old king. That remember honor. Do you know any? Sera asked. Miriam smiled. A few. But information costs? Little wolf. I'm not a wolf. You're marked by 1. Close enough. Miriam looked at Kaelin. I can get you in touch with the resistance. Kaelin straightened. What resistance? Did you think everyone believed Ronan's story? About half the old guard didn't buy it. They knew you wouldn't go feral. They knew something was wrong. But Ronan moved fast, executed anyone who questioned him too loudly. The survivors went underground. Miriam leaned forward. They've been waiting for proof. Proof that you're alive. Proof that they were right. Where are they? Scattered. The largest group is in the Ember Forests, led by your old third-in-command, Kael Ashmark. Kaelin's eyes widened. Kael's alive? Last I heard, but it's a 3-day journey from here to the Ember Forests. And Red Moon territory is between here and there. You'll have to go around, which adds another 2 days. We don't have 5 days, Kaelin said. Every day Ronan sits on my throne is another day he poisons the Dominion against me. Then you'd better travel fast. Miriam stood and walked to a cabinet in the corner. She rummaged through it and pulled out a leather pack. Supplies, food, water, basic medical kit. Also, she reached deeper and pulled out a knife in a worn sheath. Protection. She tossed the knife to Sera, who caught it awkwardly. You know how to use that? Miriam asked. I've used one before. Good. Keep it close. The forests between here and the Ember territory are full of rogues, and worse. Worse? Sera asked. Miriam and Kaelin exchanged a look. There are things in the deep woods, Kaelin said carefully, that aren't wolves. Things that predate the packs. Most of them keep to themselves. But if we're not careful, a howl split the night. All 3 of them froze. It wasn't close, maybe a mile away, but it was distinct. And it wasn't alone. More howls joined it, creating a chorus that made Sera's blood run cold. Red Moon trackers, Kaelin growled. They found our trail. Impossible, Miriam said. You're downwind, and this town has protections. Another howl. Closer this time. Miriam cursed. They must have a scent tracker. Someone with the gift. She turned to Kaelin. You need to leave. Now. If they find you here, they'll burn my tavern down just for sheltering you. We won't let that happen, Sera said. You don't have a choice. Miriam shoved the pack into Kaelin's hands. There's a stable behind the tavern. Take the gray mare. She's fast and she's mean. Ride east until you hit the river. Then follow it south. The water will hide your scent. Miriam. Go! The older woman pushed them toward the back door. I'll delay them as long as I can. Tell Kael that Miriam Greywind sends her regards. He'll know I'm trustworthy. Kaelin paused at the door. Thank you. Thank me by taking back your throne. The Dominion needs a real king, not a snake. Miriam's expression softened. And boy, keep that girl safe. Humans who accept the mate bond are rare, special. The world will try to break her. Don't let it. I won't. They ran. The stable was small but well kept. The gray mare Miriam had mentioned was in the last stall, and she was indeed mean. She tried to bite Kaelin twice before he calmed her with a low growl that seemed to remind her who was alpha. I've never ridden a horse, Sera admitted. You're about to learn. Kaelin swung up onto the mare's back and held out his hand. Sera took it, and he pulled her up in front of him. "Hold on to the mane, I'll handle the rest." The mare burst out of the stable at a full gallop. Behind them, the howls grew louder. Sera risked a glance back and saw shapes moving through the town, dozens of them. The Red Moon Pack had sent their full hunting party. "They really want us dead," Sera gasped. "They want me dead," Kaelin corrected. "You're just collateral damage to them. That's not comforting." "It wasn't meant to be," he urged the mare faster. "Hold on. This is going to get rough." The town disappeared behind them, replaced by open fields and then dense forest. The mare was indeed fast, her hooves pounding the earth in a rhythm that seemed to match Sera's racing heart. But the howls followed, always just behind them, never gaining, but never fading either. "They're hurting us," Kaelin said grimly, "driving us toward something." "Toward what?" As if in answer, the trees ahead opened up into a clearing, and in the center of that clearing was a ravine, deep, dark, and impassable. "No," Sera breathed. The mare skidded to a halt at the ravine's edge, nearly throwing them both. Behind them, the howls converged. The hunting party emerged from the trees, at least 30 wolves, their eyes glowing in the darkness. At the front stood Elder Mora in her wolf form. She was gray and ancient, her muzzle scarred from decades of fights. When she shifted to human, her expression was triumphant. "Did you really think you could run from us, little king?" she called out. "You're in our territory. These are our woods." Kaelin dismounted, helping Sera down. He positioned himself between her and the pack, his posture protective. "Last chance, Mora," he said. "Stand down. Go back to your pack. Forget we were ever here." "Or what? You'll kill us all?" Mora laughed, a cackling sound. "You're one wolf and a human. We're 30. The math doesn't work in your favor." "The math is irrelevant," Kaelin said, his voice dropping to that inhuman register. "I am the Alpha King, and you have forgotten what that means." His eyes began to glow, not just gold this time, brighter, like miniature suns burning in his skull. The temperature plummeted. Frost began to form on the grass, spreading out from where Kaelin stood in a perfect circle. The wolves whimpered, backing up instinctively. "The Alpha King," Kaelin intoned, his voice echoing with power, "is not just strong, he is the embodiment of dominance itself. Every wolf in the Dominion, whether they acknowledge it or not, is bound to him. And now I'm going to remind you what happens when you challenge a king." He shifted, but not into a wolf, into something else, something bigger. His form rippled, expanded, his body growing until he stood nearly 8 feet tall. He was still wolf-shaped, but massive, his fur black as midnight and frosted with silver. His eyes blazed like captured stars. This was the Alpha King's true form, the form that only appeared once in a generation. The Red Moon wolves took one look at him and broke. They didn't just retreat, they fled, scrambling over each other in their panic to get away. Elder Mora tried to rally them, screaming orders, but her voice was lost in the chaos. Within seconds, the clearing was empty, except for Mora. She stood alone, trembling, her eyes wide with fear. Kaelin stalked toward her, each step making the ground shudder. When he spoke, his voice was the rumble of an avalanche. "Tell your Alpha," he growled, "that the Iron Claw King lives. Tell him that I'm coming for my throne. And tell him that anyone who stands in my way will face this." He leaned down until his massive muzzle was inches from her face. "Do you understand?" Mora nodded frantically. "Then run." She did. Kaelin watched her go, then shifted back to his human form. The moment he did, his legs buckled. Sera caught him, or tried to. He was too heavy, and they both ended up on the ground. "That," Kaelin gasped, "was stupid. That form drains everything." "But it worked. It worked." He looked at her, his gold eyes tired but warm. You okay? I'm fine. You're the one who just turned into a giant wolf monster. It's called the primal form. Only the true Alpha King can do it. He smiled weakly. And it hurts like hell. Then don't do it again. If it keeps you safe, I'll do it every day. Sera helped him to his feet. The mare, bless her, had stayed close, seemingly unbothered by the display of power. Can you ride? Sera asked. I'll manage. Kaylin swung up onto the mare, and this time Sera sat behind him, her arms wrapped around his waist. Through the mate bond, she could feel his exhaustion, but also his satisfaction. They'd survived. To the river, Kaylin said. And then to the Ember Forests. Time to find out if I still have any allies left. As they rode into the night, Sera rested her cheek against his back and let the steady rhythm of his heartbeat calm her racing thoughts. They were being hunted. They were outnumbered. They had nothing but each other and a borrowed horse. But somehow, she felt safer than she'd ever felt in her entire life because she wasn't alone anymore. She had a mate, a king, a future, and she'd fight heaven and hell to keep it. 3 days later, they reached the Ember Forests. The journey had been brutal. They'd followed the river south as Miriam suggested, sleeping in shifts, eating dried meat from the pack, and constantly watching for signs of pursuit. Twice, they'd spotted Red Moon scouts on the opposite bank, but the river was wide and fast-moving, too dangerous to cross. The scouts had watched them, but hadn't attempted to follow. By the 3rd day, Kaylin had regained most of his strength. The mate bond was powerful, feeding him energy even when he should have been exhausted. Sera, on the other hand, was beyond tired. Her muscles ached, her feet were blistered, and she was fairly certain she'd never be clean again. But when they finally crossed into the Ember Forests, so named for the red-orange leaves that never seemed to fall, she felt a surge of hope. It's beautiful, she breathed. It is, Kaylin agreed, and deadly. The Ember Forests are neutral territory, governed by the wild-born pack. They don't take kindly to strangers, even kings? Especially kings. He helped her down from the mare, who was looking equally exhausted. We need to find Kale before the Wildborn find us. That turned out to be unnecessary. The moment they stepped off the mare, arrows appeared. At least a dozen, all aimed at them from various trees and bushes. Don't move, a voice called out. Male, young, with an edge of authority. Identify yourselves. Kaylin slowly raised his hands. I'm looking for Kale Ashmark. Tell him. Kaylin Stormborn requests an audience. Silence. Then, from somewhere in the trees. Bullshit. Kaylin Stormborn is dead. Do I look dead? A figure dropped from the canopy. Literally dropped, landing in a crouch with predatory grace. He was maybe 25, with copper-colored hair and bright green eyes. A wolf, clearly, but young. Too young to have met Kaylin before his death. The young wolf studied Kaylin, his expression skeptical. Then his eyes landed on Sera, specifically on the mark on her neck. His eyebrows shot up. You're marked. To a human. He looked back at Kaylin. Okay, that's unusual, but it doesn't prove you're the king. What would prove it? Kaylin asked. The young wolf grinned. Show me your mark. Every member of the royal line has the Stormborn mark, the lightning bolt on the left ribs. Without hesitation, Kaylin pulled up his borrowed shirt. There, stark against his pale skin, was a birthmark shaped exactly like a jagged lightning bolt. The young wolf's grin faded. He stared at the mark, then at Kaylin's face, then back at the mark. Holy shit, he breathed. It's really you, in the flesh. The wolf turned and shouted into the trees. Stand down! It's him! It's really him! The arrows disappeared as quickly as they'd appeared. Wolves began emerging from hiding places, at least 20 of them. all wearing makeshift armor and carrying weapons that had clearly seen better days. "I'm Torin," the young wolf said, extending his hand. "Kale's second. He's going to lose his mind when he sees you." Kalen shook his hand. "Where is he? Follow me." They were led deeper into the forest, into a camp that was more military than civilian. There were tents arranged in a defensive perimeter, sparring rings, weapon caches. This wasn't just a hideout. It was a base of operations. "How many?" Kalen asked quietly. "Wolves? About 200, scattered across 3 camps." Torin glanced back. When Ronan took over, a lot of us didn't buy his story. Some voiced their doubts and were executed. The rest of us ran. Kale organized us, gave us purpose. We've been waiting for a sign that we were right, that you were still alive. You have your sign. Yeah. Torin's expression was grim. But Ronan has the throne, the crown, and about 5,000 loyal wolves. We're outnumbered 25 to 1. I've faced worse odds. Not like this, you haven't. They reached the largest tent, where 2 guards stood at attention. Torin nodded at them, and they opened the flaps. Inside, standing over a table covered in maps and reports, was Kale Ashmark. He was older than Sera expected, maybe 50, with iron-gray hair and a scar that ran from his left eye to his jaw. But he was still clearly powerful, his shoulders broad and his stance that of a warrior. He looked up as they entered, saw Kalen, and froze. For a long moment, neither man moved. They just stared at each other across the dim tent. Then Kyle spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "My king? Hello, old friend." Kyle crossed the distance in 3 strides and dropped to one knee, his head bowed. I knew you weren't dead. I told them all, but they wouldn't listen." "Stand up, Kale." Kalen pulled the older man to his feet and embraced him. "You have nothing to kneel for. You're the one who kept the resistance alive." "We didn't know where you were. We searched for months, followed every rumor, but..." Kale pulled back, his eyes scanning Kalen's face. "What happened?" "Ronan sold me to the Red Moon Pack, kept me chained in silver for 16 days. Kale's expression darkened. "That explains why we couldn't scent you. Silver suppresses the wolf. Even from a distance, it would have masked your presence." His gaze shifted to Sera. "And who is this?" "Sera Ashford," Kalen said, pulling her forward. "My mate." Kale's eyes widened. "Mate? But she's human." "Yes. It's a long story, but she's the one who freed me. She saved my life." Kalen's hand tightened on Sera's. "And she's the reason I'm strong enough to reclaim my throne." Kyle studied Sera for a long moment, then bowed his head to her. "Then you have my loyalty as well, my lady." "I'm not a lady," Sera said quickly. "I'm just..." "Sera, you're the Alpha Queen now," Kyle said gently, "whether you claim the title or not." The tent flap opened again, and more wolves filed in, clearly the leadership of the resistance. They all stopped short when they saw Kalen, their expressions ranging from shock to joy to disbelief. "Is it really him?" a woman asked. She was tall, with dark skin and silver-streaked hair. "It's really him," Kale confirmed. "The king lives." The room erupted. Wolves shouted, embraced. Some even wept. The energy was overwhelming, and Sera found herself pressed back against Kalen's side as the crowd surged forward. "Enough!" Kalen's voice cut through the chaos. "There will be time for celebration later. Right now, we need to plan." The room quieted, and the wolves arranged themselves around the map table. "Ronan knows I'm alive by now," Kalen said, leaning over the maps. "The Red Moon Pack will have sent word. He'll be consolidating his power, calling in his loyalists, preparing for my return." "He's also been spreading propaganda," the tall woman said. "I'm Lissa, by the way. Communications." "For the past 6 months, Ronan's been telling everyone that you were a tyrant, that you were planning to execute anyone who disagreed with you, that he saved the Dominion by stopping you. Do they believe him? Sera asked. Lyssa shrugged. Some do, especially the younger wolves who don't remember the old ways. But the families who've served the crown for generations, they're skeptical. They just need proof. We'll give them proof, Kaelin said. We march on the capital, show everyone that I'm alive and Ronan's a liar. That's suicide, Torrhen said bluntly. Ronan has the crown guard, the royal fortress, and every advantage. We march in there with 200 wolves. We'll be slaughtered. Then we don't march in. We're invited. Everyone stared at him. Invited? Kyle asked. The trial of kings, Kaelin said. It's an ancient law, written into the Dominion's founding charter. If two wolves both claim the throne, they can invoke the trial. Single combat, no seconds, no interference. The winner takes the crown. Ronan will never agree to that, Lyssa said. He's already won. Why would he risk it? Because if he refuses, every wolf in the Dominion will know he's a coward. Kaelin's smile was sharp. The trial of kings can be invoked by anyone, not just the challenger. If I send a formal challenge and he refuses, tradition demands that the throne passes to me by default. He won't refuse, Kyle said slowly. He's arrogant enough to think he can beat you, especially if he believes you're still weak from the silver poisoning. Exactly. There's one problem, the tall woman said. The trial has to be witnessed by the Alpha Council. All 7 major packs have to send representatives. That means we need to get messengers to every pack in the Dominion, without Ronan intercepting them. I have people, Kael said. Fast runners, good at staying hidden. We can reach the packs. Do it, Kaelin ordered. Send word that the true king lives and invokes the trial of kings. Set the date for the next full moon that gives us 2 weeks to prepare. And what do we do in those 2 weeks? Torrhen asked. We train, Kaelin said. We gather allies, and we make sure that when I face Ronan, I'm strong enough to tear his throat out. The room buzzed with energy as plans were made and orders given. Sera found herself swept along in the current, marveling at how quickly Kaelin had taken command. This was the king he'd been before the betrayal, confident, strategic, inspiring. But as the meeting broke up and wolves dispersed to their tasks, Sera noticed something. Kaelin's hand was trembling slightly. She reached out through the mate bond and felt it exhaustion, bone deep, crushing exhaustion. He'd been running on fumes for days. The primal form had drained him more than he'd admitted, and now he was planning a battle that could determine the fate of the entire Dominion. When the tent finally emptied, leaving just the 2 of them and Kyle, Sera spoke up. You need to rest, she said firmly. I'm fine. You're exhausted. I can feel it. She crossed her arms. Don't lie to me, Kaelin. The mate bond goes both ways. Kael looked between them, then smiled. She's right, my king. You've been through hell. You need to recover before the trial, or Ronan will kill you. Kaelin sighed. I can't afford to rest. There's too much to do. Then delegate, Sera said. That's what you have Kael and the others for. Let them handle the logistics. You focus on healing. For a moment, she thought he'd argue. But then his shoulders slumped, and he nodded. Fine, but only for a few hours. A few days, Sera corrected. Sera. A few days, she repeated, her tone leaving no room for argument. Or I'll make you. Kael laughed. I like her, my king. She's got fire. She's terrifying, Kaelin muttered, but there was affection in his voice. Kael showed them to a smaller tent on the edge of the camp. It was simple, a bedroll, a small chest, a lamp, but it was private. I'll make sure no one disturbs you, Kael said. Rest well, both of you. When he left, Sera turned to Kaelin. He was standing in the center of the tent, swaying slightly. Bed, she ordered. Now. You know, Kaelin said, lowering himself onto the bedroll, for someone who was a servant a week ago, you're very good at giving orders. I'm practicing for when I'm queen, Sera said, lying down beside him. Kaelin pulled her close, tucking her against his chest. Through the mate bond, she felt his relief at finally being able to rest, to let his guard down. Sera, he murmured. Yes, thank you. For everything. For freeing me, for staying with me, for not letting me destroy myself trying to do everything alone. Sera tilted her head up and kissed him softly. You're my mate. It's my job to keep you from being an idiot. He laughed, the sound rumbling in his chest. I love you. The words hung in the air, precious and perfect. I love you too, Sera whispered, and as they lay there, wrapped in each other's arms, Sera allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd survive this, that they'd win the trial, that they'd reclaim the throne, that they'd have a future. But in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered a truth she couldn't ignore. The hardest battles were still ahead, and the biggest twist was yet to come. The full moon hung heavy in the sky, casting silver light over the ancient arena. The trial of kings would be held here, in the same place where every major challenge for the Ironclaw throne had been decided for the past 3 centuries. Sera stood in the crowd, surrounded by Kael, Torin, Lissa, and hundreds of other wolves. All 7 major packs had sent representatives, just as tradition demanded. The tension was palpable, wolves from rival packs forced to stand shoulder to shoulder, united only by their curiosity to see who would claim the throne. In the center of the arena stood Ronan. He was everything Kaelin wasn't: polished, charismatic, with golden hair and a smile that promised the world. He wore the silver crown, the corona argentum, and it glittered in the moonlight like captured stars. Where is he? Ronan called out, his voice amplified by the arena's acoustics. Where is the wolf who dares challenge me? Did he lose his courage? A growl rippled through Kael's section of the crowd, but they held their positions. Then, from the opposite entrance, Kaelin emerged. He wore simple clothes, black trousers, no shirt, no adornments. But he didn't need them. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge. His golden eyes swept the crowd, and wolves instinctively bowed their heads in submission. He walked into the center of the arena, stopping about 20 feet from Ronan. I'm here, Kaelin said simply. Ronan's smile faltered slightly. Kaelin, I have to admit, I'm impressed. I thought the Red Moon Pack would have killed you by now. They tried. And yet here you are, marked to a human, backed by a ragtag group of rebels, demanding what's no longer yours. Ronan shook his head. You should have stayed dead. You should have killed me yourself, Kaelin countered. Cowards outsource their murders. The crowd gasped. The insult was direct, brutal, and unforgivable. Ronan's expression darkened. I am the Alpha King. I wear the crown. The packs follow me. Do they? Kaelin looked around the arena. Or do they follow power, fear? And what happens when that power is revealed to be nothing but smoke and lies? Enough talk. Ronan removed the crown and set it on a pillar at the edge of the arena. You invoked the trial. Let's finish this. Both men began to circle each other. Before we begin, Kaelin said, his voice carrying to every wolf in the arena, I want everyone here to know the truth. Ronan didn't save the Dominion from a mad king. He poisoned me, sold me to our enemies, and claimed the throne through treachery. Lies, Ronan snarled. You went feral. I did what I had to do. Then why am I here? Why am I sane, healed, and stronger than ever? Kaelin stopped circling. Because I found my mate. Because the bond did what you thought 16 days of silver poisoning would prevent, it healed me. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. And who is this mate? Ronan asked mockingly. Your little human? She means nothing. She has no power, no standing, no... She has me, Kaelin interrupted, and that's all she'll ever need. Through the mate bond, Sera felt his love, fierce and absolute. Tears pricked her eyes. Ronan sneered. Then let's see if your love is enough to save you. He shifted. His wolf was massive, golden-furred, and beautiful, with eyes that burned amber. He was alpha strong. There was no denying that. But Kaelin didn't shift. He just smiled. That's your move? Kaelin asked. You go, wolf, and I'm supposed to be intimidated? Ronan lunged. Kaelin moved with inhuman speed, sidestepping the attack and delivering a crushing blow to Ronan's ribs. The golden wolf yelped, rolling across the arena floor. I don't need to shift to beat you, Kaelin said calmly. You were never my equal, Ronan. Not in strength, not in strategy, not in honor. You were my second because I pitied you. Ronan snarled and attacked again, claws extended. This time, Kaelin didn't dodge. He caught the wolf's paws mid-swipe and twisted. The sound of snapping bones echoed through the arena. Ronan howled in pain, stumbling back. Yield, Kaelin commanded. Never. Ronan shifted back to human, his broken arms hanging at unnatural angles. But his eyes blazed with defiance. I'd rather die than serve you. Then die. Kaelin moved forward, but suddenly, the air shimmered. Sera felt it through the mate bond. Wrongness. Danger. Kaelin, wait! She screamed. Too late. Ronan's broken arms healed in seconds, far faster than any wolf should be able to heal. His eyes changed from amber to a sickly purple. Did you really think? Ronan hissed, his voice layered with something that wasn't entirely wolf. That I'd face you without insurance? Dark magic. Ronan had made a deal with a warlock. The crowd erupted in outrage. Using magic in a trial of kings was forbidden, a violation of every sacred law. But Ronan didn't care. He shifted again, but this time his wolf was different, larger, twisted, with purple light crackling around its form. He attacked with supernatural speed, his claws raking across Kaelin's chest. Kaelin grunted, stumbling back, blood streaming from the wounds. No! Sera tried to run into the arena, but Kael held her back. It's a trial, Kael said urgently. No one can interfere. If you enter, Kaelin forfeits. But he's using dark magic. I know, but we have to trust Kaelin. In the arena, Kaelin wiped blood from his mouth. He looked at Ronan, then at the crowd, then at Sera. Through the mate bond, she felt his decision. You want to use forbidden power? Kaelin asked quietly. Fine. Let me show you what true power looks like. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they weren't gold anymore. They were silver. The entire arena fell silent. Silver eyes were legend. They appeared once every 1,000 years, in a wolf whose power transcended even the Alpha King. A wolf who was chosen by the moon goddess herself. Ronan, Kaelin said, his voice echoing with divine authority. You have violated sacred law. You have embraced corruption. And now, you will face judgment. He shifted into the primal form, but this time, it was different. His fur was black, streaked with silver. His eyes blazed with moonlight. And the power radiating from him made every wolf in the arena drop to their knees, unable to resist the compulsion. Even Sera felt the pull. This wasn't just an Alpha King. This was something more. Ronan tried to run, tried to shift, tried to use his stolen magic. None of it mattered. Kaelin moved like lightning, crossing the distance in a heartbeat. One swipe of his massive claws, and it was over. Ronan's corrupted wolf form dissipated, leaving just a man lying in the dirt, defeated. Yield, Kaelin commanded, his voice the rumble of a god. I yield, Ronan gasped. Kaelin shifted back to human. The silver in his eyes faded, replaced by gold once more. He walked to the pillar, picked up the corona argentum, and placed it on his own head. "The trial is concluded," Kale announced, his voice ringing out. "The throne belongs to Kaelin Stormborn. Long live the king." "Long live the king," the crowd roared. But Kaelin wasn't looking at them. He was looking at Sera. He crossed the arena, ignoring everyone else, and dropped to one knee in front of her. "Sera Ashford," he said, his voice soft but carrying through the sudden silence. "Will you stand beside me? Not as a subject, not as a servant, but as my equal, as my queen." Sera's heart felt like it might burst. "Yes." He stood, pulling her into his arms, and kissed her. The crowd erupted in cheers, but all Sera could hear was the steady beat of his heart through the mate bond. When they finally broke apart, Kaelin turned to address the gathered packs. "Today marks a new era," he declared. "An era where honor matters more than power, where loyalty is earned, not demanded, and where humans and wolves can stand together as equals." He held up Sera's hand, displaying the mark on her neck. "This woman saved my life when no one else would. She is my mate, my queen, and she will be treated with the respect she deserves. Anyone who challenges this challenges me. No one did." As the crowd celebrated, as Ronan was dragged away to face judgment, as wolves from every pack approached to swear their loyalty, Sera leaned against Kaelin and whispered, "Your eyes were silver. What did that mean?" Kaelin looked down at her, his expression soft. "It means the moon goddess approves of you, that she chose you for me, that our bond is blessed. And that's good? That's everything," he said, kissing her forehead. "It means we were always meant to be." Sera smiled, letting herself relax for the first time in what felt like forever. She'd freed a broken king. She'd fallen in love with a monster who wasn't a monster at all. She'd become a queen. And she'd learned the truth. Sometimes the most forbidden choices lead to the most extraordinary destinies. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, rebuilding the Dominion, rooting out Ronan's conspirators, navigating the politics of being a human queen in a world of wolves. But as long as she had Kaelin, as long as they had each other, Sera knew they could face anything. Because that's what mates did. They survived. Together. So that's the story of how a servant girl freed a king, and how the king burned the old world down to build a new one with her. Can you believe that Silver Eyes twist? I honestly didn't see it coming until the very end. The fact that she wasn't just his mate, but his divinely chosen mate just makes the whole story even more powerful. What did you think? Would you have freed the Alpha King if you found him chained and broken? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more epic shifter romances. I'll see you in the next video with an even wilder tale. Stay wild, everyone.